I think a lot of fans were caught off guard because I know I was for sure with the news yesterday breaking that Draymond Green had signed a 4-year, $100 million extension with the Golden State Warriors. I was surprised, especially with Draymond a year away from free agency and the uncertainty of what the Warriors are going to look like this upcoming season without Kevin Durant and without Klay Thompson for a good portion of the season due to the injury. How is D'Angelo Russell going to fit in there? Is he even going to be there long term? Is he going to be traded? Like, no more Iguodala, no more Sean Livingston. There are a lot of questions here. I don't know about anybody else, but when Draymond Green's looking ahead to free agency in 2020, he might have been the biggest name, the most notable name out there. And I'm really surprised that Draymond would sit there and go ahead and sign an extension with all the uncertainty surrounding Golden State and how they're going to look this upcoming season when he's a year away from free agency and he potentially could have been, perhaps, the biggest name on the market. It was a surprise to me. I'm sure it was a surprise to a lot of others, especially that he settled for the max and significantly less than the max. It's interesting. But the question is should the Warriors have even went ahead and done this? Should they have given him $100 million and locked him up for 4 seasons? Because here's my thing. When you talk about Draymond Green, a lot of people point to he goes places and they win, and he most certainly has a lot to do with that. He's not the only factor. He's not the primary factor. But he has been a key cog in the Warriors machine that has won all of these championships. There's no question about that. He has 4 championship rings, 5 straight NBA Finals appearances. There's no question Draymond Green has been a pillar of all of that, especially being, for the most part, a glorified role player. And don't get it wrong, that's exactly what he is, a glorified role player. And you'll have many people talk about, well, the statistics don't really measure his impact, to which I get, to which I understand to a degree, but at some point in time, when you're paying that much money to somebody, you would like the statistics to mean something, to validate something a little bit. And here's the truth about Draymond Green. His statistics are not otherworldly. Sure, he can rebound some. Sure, he's a decent passer, but he's a bad shooter. He's a hothead. He can be a bit of a knucklehead at times. He's never been a great scorer and never will be. He's several seasons removed from a year where he even averaged 14 points a game. And I know the past few seasons you've had Kevin Durant, so Draymond Green's role had changed, and there's no question about that. But even when you go back to that great season, that was the only season he shot above, I think, 35 or 36% from three-point range. That was like 38.8%. And then he only averaged 14 points a game at that. So now you're talking about a Draymond Green that's going to be 30 next year, coming off of a couple of seasons where he hasn't really put up big numbers. This, to me, as much as anything else, is almost like the Warriors are kind of projecting that his production is going to increase significantly in this upcoming season. And it very well could. But that doesn't automatically mean that it was worth it right now to give him this much money. And I'm really surprised from Draymond Green's standpoint again, because you could have went into a contract year, put up bigger numbers, and went into free agency as a preeminent guy, as one of the headline guys, and probably gotten closer to max money. You don't think the Knicks would have come calling to try and give Draymond max money? You're crazy. They would have at least offered him max money, wouldn't they? So I thought it was very curious that Draymond would leave potentially millions upon millions of dollars on the table here. Now, I get it from the standpoint of Draymond saying, hey, look, I'm 29 years old now, give or take, and I get this deal now. Gives me 4 years. I can hit free agency again in 33 and potentially have an easier time getting another similar 3 to 4 year, $25 million per type of deal when I'm 33. As opposed to wait another year, maybe you get even more money, but then it takes you into your 34 or 35 age season, and you might have a harder time getting a bigger next contract. So from a timing element, this could potentially make sense for Draymond Green, even though I do feel like he left millions of dollars up front on the effing table here, because I think he did. And without really knowing how the Warriors are going to play out or what Draymond Green is going to look like, I think both sides took a gamble here and a bit of a risk. Because if Draymond Green is just performing similar to the levels he has the past couple of years, I'm sorry, that's not worth paying $25 million a year for over the next 4 years. It's not. And as far as Draymond Green, if all of a sudden he averages 14 or 15 points a game and 9 rebounds, 8 assists, all of a sudden $25 million a year looks like a bit of a bargain for a player that can bring all of that, along with being one of the better defensive players in the league. But that said, I'm okay with this deal for the Warriors and for Draymond. From the Warriors standpoint, Draymond's been so critical to so much of what you've done over the past half decade as you built this dynasty with the 4 championships and the 5 finals appearances. Like, did you really want to lose a key cog like him? Answer's no, especially you don't have Durant, you don't have Iguodala, you don't have Livingston. You have the ability to lock up Draymond Green long term, you might as well. You've got the Splash Brothers long term. Kind of makes sense to have Draymond there as part of that as well. And there's an element there almost to me, it looks like, with the Warriors where you could say that you got to ride and die with them as long as you possibly can. Because you didn't really matter too much as an organization for many years before them. And once they're gone, you won't probably for many years after them. So similar to like a Drew Brees in New Orleans, I don't care if he wants $50 million a year, the Saints pretty much have no choice but to pay him because of how much he has meant to that organization, to that city, and so forth. And when you look at the Warriors getting ready to go into their new arena in San Francisco, it makes a lot of sense long term to have your 3 biggest names, the key cogs that help build everything with this franchise, this dynasty over the past half decade. It makes a lot of sense to have the certainty of having Steph and Clay and Dre together for the next several years. And also from the Warriors standpoint, you look at this $25 million per, unless Draymond gets hit by a bus, he's still going to be a productive player the next 4 years. And while on the surface, in theory, based off the statistics of the past couple of years, $25 million a year seems ridiculous, in the grand scheme of things, it might not be. If his production goes up the next couple of years because of some of the guys that are gone, then it doesn't look so bad. And especially in a couple of years as the salary cap continues to increase and starts getting into the $130, $140, $150 million territory, the $25 million a year you're paying for a number 3 guy like a Draymond Green really doesn't look that bad at all. So from a continuity standpoint, from a certainty standpoint, from potentially a long-term cost saving standpoint, it made a lot of sense for the Warriors to get this deal and do this deal now. And as far as Draymond, clearly he loves playing in Golden State. He enjoys playing with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. He clearly enjoys playing under Steve Kerr as head coach, otherwise he wouldn't have done this deal. And as far as he goes, if at some point in time you get tired of it and you don't want to be there anymore, you could potentially orchestrate some type of trade out of town, and the contract that you just signed will make it easier to help facilitate that. Because $25 million a year for the things that Draymond does, there will be some teams that will be willing to take him on. For Draymond, get that extension in now, so that way 4 years from now, when you're about 33 or so, you can hit free agency and you can command another big 3 to 4 year contract at $25+ million per potentially. This was a chance to do it now, start the clock on this big contract, and set you up better for the next contract. And you're still getting a ton of money anyways. How much different is it really going to be? All of that. And there's also the thing of, for Draymond Green, is maybe he looks at it and says, I don't want to go somewhere else and be the dude. I'd rather take less money and do the best for myself and the team that I'm a part of by being in this role that I'm familiar with and that I'm comfortable with. And I do think there's something to that. Certain guys just don't have that dude factor of wanting to truly be the dude. I always bring up Rasheed Wallace as a perfect example. One of the most talented basketball players that I have ever seen, that any of you probably will ever see. But he didn't have dude factor. He did not want to be that dude. And when he was in a position, such as in Portland, to be that dude, he failed miserably and he ran from it. But when he was traded to Detroit, and you had Billups, and you had Hamilton, you had Ben Wallace and Tayshaun Prince, he could be a very talented guy, but he could be a guy. He did not have to be the unquestioned guy. And by putting him in a situation where he didn't have to be the unquestioned guy, it was actually better for him. He was more efficient. He was more productive. And I feel it's somewhat similar to Draymond Green, and I think he's smart enough to realize and understand that. Because all of a sudden you go somewhere else in a year, let's say in free agency, you go to the Knicks or you go to the Hawks or you go to some other team. Now you got the burden and pressure of expectations of being the franchise dude. And I promise you, he is not that guy. And I don't think he wants to live that life. And I can't blame him. You can still make a crap ton of money and play on a contending team for the next few years. And let's face it, Draymond Green is smart enough to know, just like the Warriors were, that a core built around Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green the next 4 years can still contend for an NBA championship. And if anything, by the way the league has kind of played out this offseason, where you've got a lot of doubling up of people, you've got fewer true super teams. If anything, it helps to extend the window of contention for a team like the Golden State Warriors, because they've got 3 guys that you can put up against anybody and feel really good about their chances. So initially, I was surprised this deal happened, but thinking about it, it kind of makes sense for everybody.